Go for liftoff in T-minus 30.
Stand by for further instructions, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment.
Secondary guidance systems engaged.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, it will be on my mark.
All systems are a go. All systems are a go.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at will.
Oh, hey, hello. I feel like I should be as absolutely Minnesota as possible. Start out with hello there, but then I'd be probably picking too much on my guest tonight. We got Pam from my series of videos about justice for Pam. She's going to be joining us here in a minute. She knows I'm going to pick on her here in the opening. But welcome, TC and Friends Monday Night Musings, season 4. Season 4, folks. Can you believe that we've been doing this series for 4 seasons? And for those of you that don't, who build your idea of what a season is around what happens on television shows, these are actually seasons. I do them by the year. So not the way TV does things where you do, half of a season in March and then the other half of the season in April, and then you take 8 months off and then you come back for the rest of the season. That's not how I do things. We do these shows by seasons, and we, for basically a year. And so here we are on season 4, episode 2. Season premiere was with my friend Tom Gallagher, where we talked about Minnesota's ruling Supreme Court opinion on cars being considered public spaces. Boy, I can talk tonight, can I? And that was a really good conversation. You guys should go check that one out. And if you haven't watched all of the videos in the Justice for Pam series, then you should, because Pam's got a lot of things that have happened to her, and we're going to be talking about that tonight. So before I bring her in, shout out to IMAF from Subscribestar for being, gosh, you'd think I'm going to make sure I didn't accidentally put some vodka in this before I started recording. To IMAF from Subscribestar, if you would like to support what I do here, you can join on Subscribestar as a show producer at a show producer level or one of the other levels, or you can join here on YouTube. There's a little join button down there somewhere, and you can also join if you're watching this on Rumble and support that way. Because this, believe it or not, this stuff doesn't pay for itself, and so I have to pay for equipment and the internet like everybody else, and then I have to, pay. Well, this takes work. I have to. Okay, I do all this myself, but which probably explains the looks I get when I'm in public. But before I bring Pam on, I just want you guys to understand Pam. Pam is a fireball. She's fired up. She's this crap that she was put through by the Wabasha County Social Services and the Plainview Police Department, and the hoops that they've made her jump through and the ringer that she's been washed through and whatnot have kept her fired up. She's not given up the fight or the spunk, but she's also a little bit, and how did I describe her in my drive time dialectic on Friday? I think I said she was like a dog chasing a squirrel hopped up on, well, I won't use... It's Southeast Minnesota. You can imagine what the drug of choice is around here. But Pam has a tendency. You got to keep her on track. She's a bloodhound, but you got to keep her on track. And once she gets that scent of a fresh rabbit trail, she'll lead you down it. So I might have to like rope her in, bring her in, pull her back as we're talking, and she knows I'm going to do it too. So she's laughing at me off camera right now. So she's not a yes, she's laughing. So I pick on her a lot, and I have a tendency to have to tell her to hush too sometimes. So um, I'm going to tell you, Pam is one of those people who she's been through an awakening, and I'm not. We'll get to that, but along with going through an awakening, she's always been a fighter. Everybody that I've talked to who knows her knows she's always been a fighter. She's always watched out for the little guy, for the person who is being bullied, things like that. What I don't think Pam was expecting in her life was to be on the receiving end of that, um, from people that she kind of trusted. And that's going to be the brunt of the conversation tonight for you guys as you listen in on this, is that she's she's been awakened to how the system is stacked, and how it's stacked against everybody, and except for a very small handful of people. And that's why her story, much like Marcy's story, stood out to me. Both their stories are familiar to a lot of you. They're diverse from each other, but there's also a lot of similarities in how they were both treated by the system that they both had trusted at one point. And and if what you hear from Pam, from her isn't enough to kind of break your heart, and like kind of wrench you in two, then I don't know that there's hope for you. And am I building that up? Yeah, I want you to have that in the back of your mind as you listen to what Pam has to say, because it should break your heart. And if it doesn't, like, you're part of the problem. And I have no problem. I'll stand by that. So stay, keep your ears open. I know that a lot of you listen while you're doing things around the house. You don't need to watch, but you do need to listen. You do need to pay attention. So without any further ado, we're gonna bring in the star. Pam, thanks for sitting so long waiting. Is your phone still fully charged?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So you get everybody. Pam can attest. I warned her I was going to pick on her in the introduction.
Yep. Yes,
She knew.
I was ready.
Yeah, she was right, and she can't deny that everything that I said is true.
It's all true.
It's all true. She says,
I'm not even gonna try.
No. Mm.
It's all true. Not just you, everyone else who works with me. Slow down, redirect.
So yeah, so it's not just your personal fight with Wabasha County and the Plainview Police Department. You're just kind of like a hopped up dog with ADHD and
Yep.
okay. Uh, we met because of Marcy.
Yes.
You and Marcy had connected because of Marcy's story, and you guys had some similarities in your story, and so Marcy said, "Hey, I've got somebody I think you should meet," and that's how I realized very early on that when I ask you for information, I have to be very specific in what I'm asking for, because you inundated me with information that I had to slow down and go, okay, hold on, I need this all linked up. And I think I had to even ask you kind of for timelines several times.
Yep.
And I'll tell you, I'll admit publicly to you what I had to admit publicly to Marcy. Most of the time when I ask people for timelines, it's less for me and it's more for you.
Right.
And a lot of that so that you can actually start to really kind of put things together. What I want to do in this conversation, though, Pam, is, one, thank you for allowing me to tell your story. I know that you worked with was it Brendan Coate from
Yep. From KIMT.
KIMT, and he was able to get a good chunk of your story out, but we got a lot of your story out before he was able to get his producers to allow it, but to approve what they did approve. But your story has got some traction, and you've gotten some support from people like Steve Driskowski and others who are like, we don't know the full story here, but it sure does reek. It smells awful bad. And those who have been watching have, watched the video of uh, Plainview police entering your house, and what I say was less than constitutionally and lawfully allowed manners. Question your minor son. At the time, he was a minor. He's now an adult man. He's off serving his country, and somehow he's serving his country in Poland. We've had some interesting conversations about what's going on there, but I want you to take us back to before that day and tell us a little bit about what made you decide to get into not just childcare, but having daycare and doing a home-based daycare, and what motivated you to that. Because contrary to what a lot of people think, having a daycare is not a massive money-making scheme. You weren't rolling in the dough. You buying new cars for yourself every 6 months. Something else motivated you to try and get into doing home-based daycare. What was that?
Well, before that, I was doing foster care. That's how I adopted my fifth child. And so my kids were little, and other daycares, if I tried, that I took them to, it was you pay right there or not, blah, blah, blah. So, I was a single mom before, so struggling, I wanted to make it where I didn't charge them, when they couldn't work or for sick days or when I went on vacation, stuff like that, because they couldn't afford it as is, if I left for vacation, they'd have to pay another daycare. And then I just,
And pay you on top of it.
yeah. So I eliminated all that, and I did like hourly, and, and that's another thing where the county and stuff could not wrap their head around, and mine was more of like a family type thing, like Friday nights, all the families would get together and talk about the struggles with their kids. And it was more of a community. We were all very close families.
And some of them came to you because they were friends, and others became friends after they started coming to you.
Yeah. I didn't move to Plainview till 2010. And I started this in 2014. So I hardly knew anybody.
Yeah, so and I wanted people to hear that it was that your approach to doing home-based or in-home daycare was a lot different, and because this is an example of what I hear from people constantly is, oh, my daycare provider flaked out on me again, and I still have to pay for it. And it's in particular a person that I know, their daycare provider seems to miss work more than they are there for work, and it's a bit of an exaggeration, but it's still, you're still paying them when you miss, when your daycare provider can't be there to provide daycare. You still have to pay them for that week, and you still have to scramble to find somebody to watch your kids, or you miss work because now you don't have somebody to watch your kids.
Exactly.
So,
and we were never close because I had sub, there's two of us that always ran it, and then a backup sub. So rarely, unless we all went on vacation together, which was common, a bunch of the families and I would go places and do things, we were just all that close.
And you developed a lot of that clseness after meeting them, having them at the daycare, becoming friends with the families and whatnot. So you did daycare from, what year did you start?
2014, October 21st.
And so you had been doing daycare by the time of the event, and just so people know, the event that we're talking about took place in May of 2022.
Yeah, almost 8 years.
Yeah. And you had been shut down by social services in Wabasha County 14, 15 times by this point. Like, you had just this terrible track record of complaints, and you were constantly accused of abusing children, kidnapping small neighborhood animals, and having satanic rituals take place in the garage.
Yeah.
I
No,
mean, let's be honest. Like that's, I mean, for 8 years, you were single-handedly responsible for the zombie apocalypse and all the vampire invasions in Plainview. No, not true.
no, I didn't have,
You don't know anything about that?
no,
No.
I could be
I,
now the fabricated.
yeah,
Oh,
right.
I'm sure they'll create it now because you said so. So thanks for that.
Well, the damage is done.
Yeah. I
Cat's
mean,
out. Cat's out of the bag. What can they do? Um, tell tell the people in your own words, not about the day in question in May, but some of the let's go back just because you had some struggles with the individual who filed the complaint that started. It was May. Was it May 13th?
yeah,
Yeah,
20.
yeah, May 13th, 2022. I know that the day's easy for you to remember, but it's not always easy for me to remember because every single person I talk to can always remember the day that we're talking about. And so I've got a lot of dates in my own head. But prior to May 13th of 2022, you had been having some struggles
Mm-hmm.
w-
With her, yeah.
with this individual, and we're gonna refrain from naming her now, even though she's no longer a minor. Um, we're going to refrain from naming her just because at the time this took place, she was a minor and a friend of your daughter's.
Mm-hmm.
But you had this young lady basically working for you as a helper. She wasn't
Sub or anything.
yeah, she was just there kind of helping, and she would fill in at when you were short or when you needed a little extra.
It was basically a favor to her because she wanted to start working with children or whatever and get out of her house. And, like you said, she friends with my daughter. And so she was hanging out there all the time anyway.
And so there had been some struggles leading up to this day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Personality conflicts. What kind of things had you been dealing with?
Well, I caught her, she had at the time she was a minor, her boyfriend was not. And so she would use my daughter to come over here and like sneak out to meet him, which I caught her doing and said that won't happen again. And a couple other things. And for internet and pictures and stuff, I started noticing pictures that shouldn't have been and all that. I confronted the mother and she smoothed it all over, whatever.
And you
But
weren't confronting her in a "you're a terrible mom. How can you let
no,
her do this?" You were saying, "Hey, are you aware of
yes,
these
I put
things?"
her there because I had found this stuff and stuff they've been saying, and she, her daughter don't lie and this and that. And I said, well, she does because she came over here and lied to my face about sneaking out with her boyfriend. But that's neither here nor there, and it was a lot of things. And where she got to where, um, helping, a lot of times she told her mom she was here and she wasn't. She was running around with her boyfriend. And she was hardly here because she always, wanted to be with her friends, which I get it. That was her age and we really didn't need her. So yeah, she started developing an attitude if she actually had to work because she'd
What?
rather.
No, no. People people just wanted to be get paid or get the credit for doing something without actually having to do it. Um, and I think it's important too, once again, to emphasize that these weren't attacks. You were watching out for this young lady because
Mhm.
she was friends with your daughter.
Yep. Yeah,
You were
exactly.
concerned. You weren't trying
And
to run her life.
same page as me, has a concern because I would want someone to tell me of this stuff. So, but, but the mother had never, I can't remember the last time she was over here. It was years prior to that. But, she would always ask me, can you send Cadence home? I'm like, she's not here. I have quite a few of those, saved messages and stuff like that. or is she coming today? Oh, I forgot to tell you. No, so, there was months at a time that she wasn't even here. But yeah.
So there was this track record, and that's why I think this is really important to for backstory, because what felt like an out of the blue experience on May 13th
Mm-hmm.
was out of the blue, but there was history that led to it, and some of it was, you kind of got to the point of, this young lady's mom is calling you going, hey, is she there? Can I talk to her? Can you send her home? And you're like, oh, send her home. She's not here. So you had become the bad guy because you weren't covering for the angel that she was. You weren't covering for her anymore. And on the day in question, May 13th of 2022, Plainview cancels school.
Yep.
You're now, I say, what was capacity for you?
14.
14. And then in emergencies like school closures or things like that, you could have up to, was it like 6 or 7 more, something like that?
Oh, apparently so, but not so. I don't know.
But
I don't know anymore because they changed it every time I went to court.
but and that's where, I kind of made the cheeky comment about the way law enforcement entered, because now there is even some question about whether or not being licensed for daycare, you're giving up your right to privacy, and they can search your house unannounced at any time. I don't know how that's possible, but apparently there's something in some piece of paperwork somewhere that they try to use to justify what they do. And I would say hogwash, that law enforcement can't ever be granted that right by social services. But because my biggest concern is with how you were treated by law enforcement on that day. But so on this day in question, the school's closed. You've got a couple of more kids, a few more kids than you would normally have had, because school closes and parents are now all of a sudden stuck with a situation where kids got to go somewhere.
Right. And 2 of the parents there, Bobby and the sub, those kids were theirs. So, but the biggest, and then
And Bobby is your regular full-time, she's not only is she your friend, she was your full-time aide. She was there with you all the time.
Yes.
And you just happened to be out of town that day, traveling.
Yes.
And this young lady who in question decided she didn't want to be at work anymore and had started to ask to go home. And
because there was no school, so she wanted to run around with friends. I left at around 8:30 that morning, went outside where all the children were, looked at all of them, said goodbye. She waved goodbye, but yet she reported I was there that day.
well, I mean, she's not lying. You were there before you left.
No, she told them I was upstairs sleeping the whole day.
Yeah.
That she had no idea I was gone. But yet,
Sure.
that day she paid attention to, but that.
So she had made references to wanting to go home and had been told, I think it was by Bobby, if I'm correct, that sorry, I know that you want to go home, but you can't go home because we need you here because of the number of kids that we have. So Bobby flat out made it clear that she couldn't go home, and
she said she can go for lunch, but she needs to come back, and she wanted to go home for lunch and stay home.
And you found out that this young lady went home and complained
to her
mom and made some allegations about you and your behavior and Bobby's behavior. And her mom waited a little while and ended up calling and turning you in based on these allegations to Wabasha County Social Services Department.
Mm-hmm.
And they eventually showed up at
Then,
the house.
well, apparently the call was made like 12:24, something like that. They were already at the police station conveying to shut me down by like 1:00, 1:30 to my house before 2:00
Right. So,
without talking to the witness.
yeah, who allegedly witnessed all these
Mhm.
terrible things. And to make it clear, some of the allegations, and I want people to understand that we've got Bobby's full interview and Pam's full interview with social services and Plainview PD sitting in. We've got those full interviews, and those will be released in the days to follow. They're very long and they're not easy to sit through, but the allegations that were made in some references are about physical, like you using force on kids that are well before the day in question.
Mm-hmm.
It's just this young lady decided to be a witness to these events
Well, that day,
on May 13th,
even kids that weren't there that day, she
yeah,
witnessed happening that day.
as well as witnessing things on other days and never once having made a complaint to her mother about any of this stuff. It was just this particular day. If you had to make a guess at all, because you can never really know the motives of an individual, but in the case of the young lady, if you were going to guess what the motivation was, do you think she was, what was it? Was she angry at you and wanted revenge? Was
Mm-mm.
it, had she witnessed you doing all of these things and finally she just psychologically couldn't handle it anymore? What
I
was it?
She thought it would just be shut down for the rest of the day and she could go about her business because she had reached out to me asking when it was going to be reopened. She was reaching out to my daughter when she can come back to work. In court, she said she didn't understand. She was manipulated. In the interview itself, her mom is running the interview saying, no, remember you said this. And she's like, no, she pretty much reneged on all of it when they finally did talk to her.
Yeah, because like I said, I'm not going to get into the details of
Right.
your portion of the interview, and I may or may not be aware of what was said in her interview, um, may or may not, but we know for a fact that she made allegations that you were using things like spanking and slapping.
Mm-hmm.
No parent that was interviewed has ever backed up those allegations.
None.
And I have listened to multiple of those interviews. Not one parent has ever backed up those
Now,
allegations.
the interesting thing is that was ruled out before the TIS. However, they went and told every single parent and asked them that, saying it happened and was told by other parents.
But they have absolutely no audio or record of any parent ever having stated that.
Well, the audio says no,
Right.
but they asked them anyway to try and get them to say something after it was already ruled out. So legally, they weren't even supposed to be asking them those questions because it was ruled out before, the interviews.
You feel like so the young lady the young lady was motivated by selfishness. She just wanted the day off and
Yep,
couldn't come
yep.
up with a good excuse to not be there. So,
They manipulated her.
well, do you think it was her, or do you think it was social services that manipulated her, or do you think it was mom?
Mom, because it was definitely,
Yeah.
yeah, all the above.
Yeah, let's not say they. Let's be very clear here. You believe it was mom.
Oh yeah.
Do you think she went home and said, "Mom, we got to shut down the daycare," or how do you think that played out based on what you know of the scene and having heard her interview?
Honestly, I have no idea. I mean, she might have went home, said, "Hey, that kid's a fussy eater," and blah blah blah. And knowing her mom, she twisted it and turned it in. And for them to come in here off third hand phone call within an hour and a half and make the decision, it says right in there. So Sir Kayla Hall and Emily Adele made the decision to shut me down without TIS or warrant.
Yeah.
And
All based on safety.
But yet in the body cam, it says all the children were happy, healthy, and zero safety concerns.
Yeah, and folks, if you haven't watched the body cam videos, they are up, and they will be in the link of the video tonight. That when you go back, you have to watch. Sorry, you have to listen to my commentary because I'm funny, and I may or may not pick on all of them. I say some not so nice things, and I don't care if you don't like it. I know for Pam's friends. Pam's told me she shared her concern some of her friends had about some of the comments I made about the way some of the people look. I'm sorry, when you are using the force of the state to come in and ruin someone's life off of second and third hand information, you deserve to be picked on for being a fat slob. Whether you're wearing a uniform with a badge and a gun, or you just show up in unprofessional attire with all your body hanging out all over the place. Biederman and others.
But the most
Pam did not approve of she never said it was okay. She just said she understood. I just want everybody to understand.
So, but no, the most disturbing part about that day is they were there for allegedly claiming a child was force fed. However, when they got there, Bobby was feeding that child and they didn't check on it, didn't see if the child was okay, didn't even go down there to check on any of the children. They ran upstairs to the non-daycare areas and violated my personal space. But and they never laid eyes on that child the entire day. And the body cam shows the mother carrying that child away and happy and bouncing on.
Yeah, they were very fixated on a lot of things, like the birds. They were very upset about the birds.
Everything about
say that again.
Everything about them was legal. They don't have to be caged. Yes, they got to be cleaned up after, but that was a non-daycare area. The kids were outside, and the judge stated he would have rather had Bobby outside watching kids than running in worrying about what the bird's doing in a non-daycare area.
Yeah, even the judge realized that, and
yeah,
and on top of it, Plainview PD was very Officer Sizzy, I call him, was very worried about Tegu lizard that he had before he even saw the lizard during this event.
Well, he thought it was a python at first.
Yes.
But an interesting fact about that, it shows the workers and all them walking around my contract that has all my animals listed. So they knew if they knew anything about daycare, they should have had that contract in hand. But
right.
In fact, there was zero daycare licensors there that day or anyone with the training to come in to do what they did.
Yeah, Officer Sizzy was very interested in that lizard and was building the narrative before he ever was able to lay eyes on it about how aggressive and how they are and how dangerous they are and how they're illegal to have in Florida. Mm-hmm. But you got to watch, folks, because he was very upset about that lizard and made a claim that he had witnessed it in the garage in a prior event.
Mm-hmm. But yet he thought it was a python when he got there. But the interesting fact about that is Mr. Tim put in a statement to Bobby that they went in the garage to check for children. Well, 3 times. And I never heard him state that he was even concerned about children. He was only focused on a lizard and my parrots.
In the body cam footage, there's never a concern about children being in the garage.
No.
I've listened to it. I probably not nearly as many times as you have, but I cannot in any of the body cam footage of Officer Sizzy in particular.
Yeah.
I've never once heard him go, "I'm worried there are kids in the garage."
No, and then he goes and tells the other officer and Heidi Young and Miss Professional, who are across the street from my house in public in front of everyone. He asks her if she knows about a giant Tego. Again, she's holding my contract that says Tego, which they've seen since 2019 at my house. Licensor loved him. Anyway, and goes, "What the okay."
Mm-hmm.
That's when the other officer says quiet, but yet they said they
Yeah.
had no.
Yeah, they didn't have body cam for him, even though he indicated his was on. And then mysteriously retired a short time later. But they show up. You're not there.
Mm-mm.
And they kind of ramrod Bobby in this situation. I've had some people say, "What? Well, Bobby kind of let him in the house," and I'm like, I don't know. If you watch what happened, Bobby did not let them
No.
in the house.
What?
She did not ever. She said, "Could you wait here? The kids are sleeping." And
Yes. And she said, I
the
have to call Pam first.
yeah, and the cop just let himself in
Yep.
and
And they
Bobby
never,
met him at the door the second time. Was like, "Oh," and he goes, "Well, we're coming in." And Bobby, folks, you got to watch because Bobby's just like, "Oh, okay." It wasn't like, "Oh, sure, please come on in." It was like,
yeah, here, hand on the door and said police and had it open.
yeah.
He actually hit her with it because she was on the other side of it calling me.
When Bobby called you and said, "Hey, they're here and they're talking about shutting down the daycare," we didn't get to hear that part of the call because Bobby had stepped off camera to call you. As close as you uh, can you reenact your first response to what Bobby was saying to you, even if it's words you're not proud of?
Well, no, but Bobby didn't say anything to me. She just got me on the phone and then handed it to them.
But she told you why they were. She didn't tell you why they were there.
No. She said, no, she just said, hey, she goes, because I said, put me on the phone with them. Because she couldn't tell me. She said, they're talking about shutting us down. And I remember that part. I asked why. And she goes, I don't know. They wouldn't tell me. So then she went out. That's when she was walking back out the door when the officer hit her in the face with it coming in and handed it to the social worker who went outside to talk to me, but yet reports in the chronology, she walked upstairs at that time with all of them.
Yeah, no, she didn't.
No.
No. Um,
And on that phone call, she told me something totally different than what they wrote down. And I actually have the recording to back that up.
See that, folks. This is why. This is why when I met Pam and I asked her, "Do you have do you have audio? Do you have video?" And she goes, "Oh, do I have audio and video?" She's
Yeah.
for
Well,
a person for let's start with this. I think this is or not start with this. Let's go here. I think this is a good place for people to understand that prior to May 13th of 2022, you would have been the person with the, I'm not saying you did, but you would have been the person who would have been willing to put a blue line flag in your yard and
absolutely.
a sign that says,
Backup police.
huh?
I had one of those police flags and everything else.
How quickly after this event did that begin to change for you?
Not quickly. It didn't begin to change for me until I got tipped off in August about some police report that was all of a sudden sent to the commissioner. The husband told me this. So then in November, I asked for the police report and it was all blacked out. And that's when I started doing data requests, and the rudeness and the pushback is when something was up.
I want people to hear my paraphrase of what she just said. Not because I'm picking on her, because I'm not. Pam knows when I want to pick on her, I'll just pick on her. We've become friends, poor gal.
And none of it was submitted in court. None of it. So there was no idea.
Pam is sitting here telling you, and I can verify this as a response that a lot of people have. She was, for lack of better terminology, staring a violation of her rights in the face. The state, literally the state of Minnesota, through an agent of the state, which is social services in Wabasha County and the Plainview Police Department, show up at her house unannounced, uninvited, push their way in, violate her rights, question her minor son without a parent present, force him to ID himself with no suspicion of a crime having been committed. And there was another person there who they never ID'd. So
the one that, the witness,
yeah,
and also Bobby's husband.
they make him ID himself, because cops have to have that ID crack. Question him multiple times. In relation to the lizard, you need to understand, this reptile was a focus of at least one officer. He wanted that thing out of that house. I don't know how else to say it. He literally was trying to call the DNR to find out if he could get that thing removed.
And they told every single family that he was illegal and I needed a variance and it had to be in there. So I emailed my licensor and said, do I need a variance? And she goes, no, you do not.
Exactly.
In every interview, it was a violation. And oh yeah, and they swore by it because the licensor wasn't there. So they had no idea.
Pam's watching all of this play out in May 13th of 2022.
And I didn't get it until April 2023.
She still was like, no, I backed the cops, until she finally had to start asking them to produce evidence of what took place that day.
Yep.
And you heard the thing that pushed her over the edge of not trusting them anymore was the way she was treated. And folks, that's why I do what I do with the channel, is for people to understand. I taught Pam and Marcy a phrase: back the blue until it happens to you.
Well, and what's even more disturbing is when I was trying to get it to, because I didn't have an attorney, so it was my right to get this data for court. There's an email correspondence with them and Carrie Kelly. And Carrie Kelly saying, I'll laugh. She'll get it soon enough. She'll get what's coming to her. Laugh at the fact when, that, what kind of response is that? Because I'm asking for data to prove my case and the attorney's making a joke of it.
Yeah, and just so people know, Carrie, you said Carrie Kelly.
Yep, the former county attorney.
Former county attorney. Yep. How much of a gut punch was it for you to go from being, hey, I trust the cops, I believe the cops are, out there to protect and serve, maybe being frustrated with social services, being angry at what was being done to you, but understanding, like, hey, look, they do have a job to do. I get it. How much of a gut punch was it for you when you started to realize that?
Well, at first
they were, again, at this point, they were no longer, they weren't just doing their job. They were now motivated against you. They had decided you deserved to have everything happen to you.
And that happened when in December, when Bobby and I turned in complaints about how we were treated, and the chief said they were unwarranted, unjustified. and backed him up. And that was right then and there. If the chief said that, I mean, everything I ever thought, I went from telling people you can't trust them, don't, that like I said, I would trust a robber at my house before I called the cops, because at least I knew he was there to rob me.
Yeah. Material goods can be replaced. Feeling safe and secure in your own home.
They violated it. They walked
Yeah.
it like a crime scene. It was disgusting. In the neighbors' yards, across the yard, giving out my family's personal information. They didn't ID any of the people who got the kids, yet told my staff that they were all checked out, and they didn't confirm any of them. Anyone could have walked in because they were out front, and the person they came in said that did all this stuff was left alone with the kids.
We have video of
Yeah.
one parent, actually, it was a grandparent,
Mm-hmm.
picking up her grandchildren. And in that conversation, all that happens is they're asked, "Who are you here for and who are you?" to the child. There was never any effort to actually authenticate or verify that she was there, and rightfully so, to pick that child up.
And then she walks in the back and tells the helper that they're all verified.
You were on your way out of state at the time that this
No,
was taking place.
Chicago.
You were on your way to Chicago. How long did you turn around and come back right away?
No, like that wasn't really an option. We're with other people. And here's the thing. I did not, for the fact, when I talked to Heidi Young on the phone, she said, they touched base at me Monday. They probably just need to close me on Monday. All the kids were happy, healthy, zero safety concerns. Go ahead and tell my parents, just maybe Monday, just made the whole, and she's like, blah, blah, blah. Said they didn't find any issues, any of this, and so no idea. So I came back Sunday because, and called them Monday multiple times, and they wouldn't call me back. And then when they did, they had a whole different story, because they knew they legally couldn't have shut me down without a TIS, which they did not have on May 13th. And now we're into May 16th. And in fact, it didn't go into effect till midnight, May 17th.
Yeah, so they had you, they shut you down, for lack of better terminology, in violation of their own policy.
Mm-hmm. And DHS told them they had to have the TIS or, a safety thing, and they had neither. No warrant or no TIS. And they knew this. So they, in fact, Kayla Hall and Emily Idell said, well, we need to shut them down, when in fact they didn't even lay eyes on that child that day. Or that Heidi Young didn't even go into the daycare area and look at anything. And she was the only one that had the right to do that.
Yeah, she was trusting people who weren't trained in any of that.
Right.
And I want people to understand too is that,
and clearly she wasn't trained either, that all she did was go upstairs, go through paperwork that she lied on the stand and said I didn't have, and my own licensor on the stand said I had. I mean,
and yeah, that's what I'm trying to get to, is like the entire daycare system in the state of Minnesota is a farce. And I don't mean the daycares themselves, but the system, it's licensing is handled through the state, but complaints go to the county, and anybody in social services who gets the complaint can respond to the complaint, but they're not all trained in how the state decides to do licensing, and so they don't even understand licensing and what's allowed in licensing. And what happened to you is untrained people come to your home, shut down your daycare based on an alleged emergency,
mm-hmm.
and have no information
You know,
about any of the conditions.
Yeah, in the very first complaint, I was there the whole day upstairs sleeping, and before they even entered my home, they knew I wasn't there that day. But yet, the first place Heidi Young rushed was up to my bedroom and my bathroom. So right there, the first accusation wasn't even true. So now they had to come up with something. And the other accusation about me and a certain kid that day, so they had to toss that out because the kid wasn't there and neither was I, which I told them that. So when they came in, they switched it to 2 spots of bird poop on the railing. And kids were sleeping on they switched the upstairs to the daycare and the downstairs not, because they found none of it downstairs.
Yeah, that's what. For those that are watching or listening, like,
I can't make it up.
yeah, well, Pam's not saying that she just lets the birds poop everywhere and never cleans it up. No, that's
Absolutely.
not what she's saying. She's saying that birds poop, and sometimes it doesn't get cleaned up right away because you're busy, and
But
yet the birds had no access to the children in the daycare area of the house.
right. And even that Heidi Young lied on the stand saying I didn't have a gate. Well, she never went down to the daycare area, so she had no idea. In fact, not one, but I had 2 gates, which the cop broke one of them that day because he couldn't open it. But yet they told me it wasn't, kids could get through it.
Yeah, hey. That is unfair. He is not trained in how to open gates. They are only there to break down doors and shoot people. That's all. That's what, like, you don't get training on baby gates, Pam. Come on.
Well, see, the other interesting fact about that day is my internet went out from the time they came to the time they left.
Pam just knew. She just had to bring that up because I told her, like, I
can back that up. My internet went out.
No, I believe you that the internet went out, Pam. I've never said I don't believe you. I just don't know that Plainview PD is. Yeah, never mind. That's one of those rabbit trails, and we're just not going down that rabbit trail. Yes, the internet went out that day.
But I had no footage to back up anything they said. So I had no idea what was going on until April of 23.
When you finally got the body cams.
The reason I got that was because I got documents turned over to me from a file from Kayla Hall where she had checked off, she submitted body cam. So when I went back to Mr. Tim and I said, you're telling me there's none, but right here says body cam. That's when he produced the only officer who he told me wasn't there.
That'd be Officer Szymanski.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So I want people to understand that my loathing for Chief Tim of the Plainview Police Department is not based on the fact that he simply wears a uniform. It's based on the fact that he told the victim of this situation, of this clear abuse of power, this clear abuse of authority, that there's body cam footage, but the person that we have the body cam footage for was not there that day, even though the body cam footage clearly from that officer demonstrates he was there that day. Mm-hmm. And not only does it demonstrate that he was there that day, it also demonstrates that he, like we've already said, was very much focused on a lot of things that had absolutely nothing at all to do with the original basis for the call. And then allegedly, the other officer who at one point on body cam indicates that his body cam is on, we've never been able to get that body cam footage.
No.
So yeah, I loathe Chief Tim of the Plainview Police Department because I think he had an opportunity to save face and say, "Hey, we screwed up and we made." Nope, he didn't. He's doubled down.
Yep, and lied repeatedly to me. So, yeah. I mean, and officers, if that's the example he's setting.
Right.
You know, and the fact Andrew McGraw called social services to the police station before they came here. She's the records person. What authority does she have to call a meeting about my daycare? Just saying.
She called the officers in, right?
She told social services to meet at the police station before they come to my house.
Well, I'm not saying she has authority. So just so people understand, social services, and I wish really people need to understand this. Social services will never go to a house and under these circumstances without law enforcement. Because they've been trained that anything like this is a dangerous for them. And so because we've had some questions about even Wabasha County Sheriff's Office involvement in this situation, because they list a Deputy Baab, as having been on the call.
Right, but he was called.
And without being able to get a report, because I don't believe Deputy Babb did a report, because I don't believe that he was ever involved. He was never on scene in Plainview. What ended up happening is that social services for Wabasha County called their law enforcement go-to, which would have been the Wabasha County Sheriff's Office, and said, hey, we've got this complaint about this daycare in Plainview, and we need to go inspect it and shut it down because of these complaints. We're going to need somebody to go with us. And Wabasha County Sheriff's Office, whether it be Deputy Babb or the sheriff, said, that's not our jurisdiction. That's covered by Plainview. So what I would speculate happened is they got told, no, we're not involving ourselves there. You need to reach out to Plainview. Phone call gets made by, let's assume Kayla Hall to Plainview PD, and Andrea McGraw answers the phone because that's her job there. She answers the phone at the Plainview Police Department. And she said, well, if you want to have our officers go along, you're going to need to meet them here at the station and fill them in. That's what I believe probably happened, which is perfectly kosher.
Right.
That's a perfectly legitimate way of handling it. What's not legitimate is the immediate go-to of bringing people to a scene where there are children who you have no reason to believe are in imminent danger. You're going to bring cops, men and women with
guns
and tasers and badges into a scene that, no matter which way you slice it, is going to be very traumatic for the children. And now those children will forever have in their minds, and we know this for a fact because I've had parents who have reached out to me and attest to this day that their children have been traumatized and specifically see cops in a very different light than they ever did before because of what they witnessed that day. And that's why the problem here is not just with social services, but it's with the over reliance upon law enforcement in these situations. And the reason that they do it is that it gives them a sense of authority that they do not have under normal circumstances. Because the minute you put an armed agent of law enforcement on scene with a badge and a gun, it changes the entire dynamic. Because Bobby, having messaged back and forth with Bobby, having listened to her interview, I guarantee you that if that woman had shown up without a cop, they would not have gone in that house as easily as they did and then been able to fabricate all of the stories that they did. And that's exactly what happened. They flat out got caught lying. So we're glad the cops were there to get it on video cam, on body cam, but they flat out used law enforcement to get into that house when they had no cause to come in at all.
The same thing with June 14th, when they came here, because someone on Facebook seen kids having fun, so assumed. But
yeah, exactly. And that was the other thing. May 13th of 2022, they show up to shut down your daycare. And on June 14th of 2022, Plainview PD shows up with them again.
But only one cop.
Right. And we have that audio of that entire interaction is out as well. They show up again, this time not in the daycare capacity, but because now Bobby had kids at her house that the state said she couldn't even have there.
No, day before, a bunch of families came over with their kids because my grandson was here, and we had a family fun day outside. Well, the parent posted on Facebook, had fun, here, glad to see everyone, but it was only pictures of the kids. So another daycare provider concerned, stalked her Facebook, turned it into the county, and without even investigating, they show up the next day after they were informed not to tell my attorney about it, just to show up.
You heard that, folks. They were informed by a supervisor to not advise.
Dell,
By who?
Emily Adele and Kayla Hall, not to inform my attorney.
Yeah. So the county attorney and Kayla Hall told their underlings, don't reach out to her attorney, even though she has an attorney now. Don't tell the attorney. And it was a threat. If you listen, she was being threatened with legal action. The entire process, and there again, we'll link the entire Justice for Pam playlist on here for you guys to be able to watch through if you haven't watched it yet. It was a threat. It was a threat of pending legal action if you ever have kids here again that are not family.
Yep, and they said DHS said all this. Well, I called DHS, and she said, if their parents are there, you did nothing wrong. She goes, has I told them the same thing? But yet they went a step and beyond, said, even if the parents are there, it's illegal for me to have kids. And they repeated that multiple times. And that, in fact, is not the law, and blamed DHS for all of it.
Well, and not to mention the fact that even if DHS says it, it's still not law.
Right.
DHS doesn't, over a daycare licensing issue, over a daycare complaint, short of a judge hearing a case, and there are even questions about whether or not that's lawful, but short of a judge hearing a case and putting you on some sort of house arrest, some sort of home detention pending a criminal trial, they can't tell you who you can have at your house and who you can't have at your house. There were at this point, there were no criminal charges.
None. I thought you were innocent until proven guilty. Ask Nicole Mitchell. Had to throw that in there.
At no point now we did find out later on that Chief Tim did try to have you charged with a crime. But to this day, they won't tell us what it is, will they?
Nope, no idea. All I know is that it was Mr. Stinson said there was no criminal charges March 3rd, 2023. So I asked
he was declining to pursue criminal charges based on the request from the Plainview Police Department Chief Jason Tim. He was declining to press charges, which means Jason Tim advocating for, I don't even remember the officer's name now, Sergeant, the guy who showed up at your house and the one that sat in on the interviews.
Brandon Miller.
Yeah, Brandon Miller. They tried to charge you with something related to all of their activities.
That's what I'm guessing. I mean,
it has to be. Like, they saw something that they determined was criminal.
Requested.
Say that again.
They won't even give me the data on there's new incident report numbers. So I asked for that, and they won't confirm, deny, or give me data, because apparently if they don't answer you, it doesn't happen.
And so we have our own concerns, especially with how Stinson's handled things with Marcy and her case with her son Spencer, but he's not been fully forthright with you either. But he kind of handed Plainview PD a loss because he refused to press charges. But he also won't play ball and tell you what it was they tried to charge you with.
And that was a month before I even went to court. And I didn't even realize this till November 23, but I went to court in April 23, and none of this was disclosed in fact, his only 12 pages were taken from the first court in 2022 where this judge told him that wasn't allowed. And after I got my hands on the body cam, he just submitted that. And even
Wait, the judge told Stinson what wasn't allowed.
he wanted all new evidence, nothing from the first court case. And all Stinson submitted was everything from the first court case, just worded different. That was already ruled on.
Yeah, so you need to understand. So these were administrative law courts, not criminal courts.
No.
So these are administrative law courts handling the daycare complaints.
Yep.
Stinson representing the county in this situation, not the police department. Now he's representing
the court appealing them.
He's helping the county with their appeal. So they have the very first court hearing, and the judge says none of this is admissible. And so they do an appeal.
I did an appeal.
Right. So there's an appeal, and Stinson shows back up again with all the same stuff that the judge had tossed out before. And the judge is like, we told you, you need to bring new evidence. You can't keep bringing the old stuff.
But see, I didn't receive his evidence till an hour before court, and he didn't send it to the judge either. And there's an email the night before court of the judge asking him when and where court is. And he didn't submit any of the evidence until an hour before court. He handed me a binder of 12 pages. And I said, what is this shit? It's the same stuff as before.
Even though he had been told not to use it again.
Yep. But see, this judge didn't know everything in the first court case. So him being a weasel slid it in there.
And long story short, everybody's been paying attention knows they ended up taking your daycare from you. For lack of terminology, because they told you either fire, because Bobby was missing, allegedly was missing one piece of documentation about some training.
Right, which they proved not true.
Right. But that was their allegation.
No,
in the end,
because they didn't believe I would fire Bobby.
Well, no, but what their allegation was that Bobby didn't have training on one particular thing, and that was therefore enough for them to justify shutting you down. They still found out that Bobby did have the training, but they still insisted that you fire her regardless.
Right.
And you said, I'm not going to fire her.
Well, it was against the law for me to fire because I had workman's comp on her and everything else. And so the attorney I had at the time pointed that out. So the commissioner came back, well, we don't believe that you'll fire her, even though prior to that, she already had a new job, which I already contacted them about.
They wanted you to say she was fired. They didn't want you to say she was working somewhere else. They wanted you to say she was fired.
I had no right to do that. Innocent till proven guilty, and I didn't believe she was guilty then, and neither did a single family.
What was their allegation then? Were they alleging that it was Bobby that was physically violent?
Bobby that was force feeding.
Force feeding.
Yeah.
With no evidence.
None. Just say so. Well, they came in here off third hand. Say so.
Right. So that final act.
Oh no.
That final thing. The final seizure of your license came because you wouldn't say Bobby had already moved on because she had bills to pay and she had a new job and you weren't paying her anymore because your daycare wasn't open. But right. They wanted you. This is what they wanted. They wanted you to say you would fire Bobby.
Yep.
They wanted you to say it.
Yep. Because that would mean I believe them.
Right. And you were like, I'm not fire. One, I don't need to fire her. She's already got a new job.
Right. And DHS refused to mediate with me unless I admitted everything they were accusing me of.
People need to hear that again. DHS what?
Refused to, after the judge ordered mediation, they refused to comply unless I admitted to everything they said I did.
Which would have, admitting that you had done everything that they had accused you of having done would have been enough, even in mediation, for them to say, we're not going to give you a license.
Oh, no, they were going to give me a license. It was a conditional one. They wanted me to admit I didn't have the papers. They wanted me basically probably admit Bobby did that. And I said, I'm not going to do it because I have the evidence against all that.
No, what I was saying is that everything that they were accusing you of, they were trying to use to strip you of your license.
Yes.
And then
To justify.
they agreed, we will mediate and let her keep her license as long as she admits to all of these things. That would have been enough for us to not give her her license back.
Correct. Or no, for the conditional license too.
Right, but that's my point. They're
Yeah.
going to now, that's what I'm getting at. All of the stuff that they accused you of was enough for them to take your license, but they were going to let you keep your license as long as you admitted to being guilty of the stuff
Yeah.
that was going to take
Yep.
your license.
Yep. Exactly. Yep.
That's how this works, folks. You have people, you need to understand this. This is how the state works. This is how what you guys call government. That's how government works. We'll let you continue to do what you're doing as long as you admit we're right. But if you won't admit we're right, then we're still going to ruin your life.
Well, and that's just it. In that first one, the commissioner ruled because I didn't fire Bobby. The second one, even after Stinson declined to come back after my thing, and I produced all the evidence, the commissioner ruled they could climb through a doggy door on that gate, which was never mentioned in any of it. They just created a thing and said, we're just going to go with this, even after the
Wait,
judge.
go back. Say no. No, I'm confused. Which is not hard to do.
Right.
So,
So out of both court cases, the first one, the commissioner ruled with Wabasha because of Bobby, because I wouldn't fire her. The second one, the commissioner ruled with Wabasha because on the body cam, there's a doggy door on it, on the gate to go upstairs, which
Yep.
locks. But they ruled the children could get up there by bird feces, so they ruled in favor of Wabasha. That was their justification.
So I'm just gonna. I'm gonna tell people this is where you need to go and watch the body cam footage of Officer Sizzy not being able to even open the baby gate in question, but we're supposed to believe children are going to be able to crawl through a locked doggy door on a baby gate.
Mm-hmm. That locks it.
That a professional cop couldn't even get through without breaking.
No, he broke my gate opening it.
Yeah. And then said, damn thing's broke.
Yeah.
As he breaks it.
Mm-hmm.
So
and allow screenshots from the body cam that I submitted as evidence to prove my thing, and came back saying those weren't pictures in court. So when I asked them, so the body cam that you accepted, the the still pictures off it, we can't answer that question.
The judge couldn't answer that.
Right. No, the commissioner couldn't answer that.
Oh, okay.
Not the judge, the commissioner. Because the judge already wanted, and that conditional license, a bunch of it removed, and they refused.
Yeah, so and this is, folks, this is how, like, you might think that, like, okay, well, this is just one case. This is just one person who she just happened to get really unlucky and got some really bad people that all kind of lined up perfectly in this perfect storm of abuse. Like, no, folks, this is the level of incompetence and crookedness of government everywhere. Everywhere. They are all stacked up against you no matter what. When the system decides to come against you, they will come against you. Like that's what they do. And and Bobby and I have chatted, and now Pam and I, of course, have obviously talked. We talk a lot still. The reality of all of this is that it takes crap. And Pam, correct me if I'm wrong, but I bet the way you talk to cops now is a lot different than it was prior to May or even August of 2022.
No, absolutely. I mean, you can hear in that one recording, sorry, I'm not going to listen. You lie. I'm not, no, I'm not going to listen to him anymore.
Um,
I don't believe the ones in this town. I believe they're about whoever's going to give them a hero complex.
well, okay. So here's one of the somebody that watches the channel said, "Well, I know Chief Tim. He goes to my church. There's got to be more to this story." Is that do you? How do I want to? The reality of that is that's everybody's response, because they all, in a small town, everybody's response when they hear about corruption or they hear about dirty tactics in law enforcement. There's not in my town. Not, I mean, that might happen
That's
in Minneapolis, but
all I get.
say that again.
Absolutely. That's all I get. That's,
Right?
it's not happening here. However, since this started, I'm talking to people I've never even met coming forward about their stories. So feeling the same way, no one's listening to them. It can't happen here. And I got them filing complaints and speaking up, because it's not going to change unless you do.
Exactly. Do you, and I know this is probably it's probably a stupid question, but do you think, had the events of May 13th of 2022 not taken place, you'd still be the same Pam? And if somebody were trying to tell you, hey, look, I know that you think everything's okay, but I'm telling you there's problems here in Plainview, knowing yourself the way that you do, and the fact that you were, willing to have one of those, this house, we respect, law enforcement, or law enforcement lives matter type signs, would you be like, okay, I get it, but not in my town? Would you have been one of those not, that doesn't happen here kind of people?
No, actually, not. That's kind of why they targeted me, because months prior to that, I had people asking me what to do about corrupt cases with social services, and I was even in on their court cases. So, when I went back and started piecing all the interaction together, months and stuff prior to that, I was already a pain in their side, because people are coming to me about lies, and so I was already, trying to hook them up with whoever they can, even one with attorneys and legal aid. So I was already on their radar. And I think that's why they jumped so fast at this.
Yeah, I wanted to clarify that, because you said they targeted you, and I'm not disputing that they came after you. What I dispute is the use of the word targeted. I don't.
Or seen an opportunity.
There you go. They had an opportunity, and you know me, I'm very particular about words.
Yep. That
Um,
is, yep, had an opportunity.
they're
And
like, bingo, we got what we need to get rid of this voice.
right. And they thought they were going to bully me, not knowing me. And I knew there was something off from the minute, because I knew they were lying.
Well, I think they knew you, Pam. They knew you, and they still proceeded because they knew they were going to win. They knew. I mean, and I know that sounds terrible, right? It's like, you
Well,
mean, go ahead.
no, if they think this is a win, I mean, they got them 5 employees, I think it's up to 7 employees that are no longer with Wabasha after my case, all hiding or retiring or resigning. So, I mean, and they know I'm still going public and I'm not stopping. So if they think it's a win to always look over their shoulder, good for them.
Well, I don't. When I say they, I don't. I'm not referring to the individuals. I'm not referring to the Daniel Biedermans and folks. Their names plastered all over the videos already, so I don't care. I'm not referring to the Kayla Halls individually. When
Right.
I say they, I'm referring to the system.
Oh,
The system knew it was going to win,
mm-hmm.
and and the agents that it sent out to do its dirty work, the Biedermans and the Halls and the Szyminskis and Kruxmeyers and basically the Tims, they're all agents leading to that victory, and they didn't care who else got hurt. They wanted you silenced. And so they did know you, which is why they came,
Well, yeah.
there again, they didn't come after you. They took the opportunity, like literally, which by accident presented itself.
Yep.
Over a butthurt teenage girl who just wanted to have the day off to go screw around with her friends. And does that make what she did right? No, it doesn't justify it. Does that, and we've made it very clear that you believe the mom had a vendetta. And
I mean, it wasn't just her either. They gave her, the same thing. Opportunity presented itself.
mm-hmm. Mom, the young lady's mother doesn't like you.
No.
That's and she wouldn't have told her daughter to go make up a story about you.
And here's the thing, if they were so fearful of me, why, and the daughter thought I was here, why would she send her back here after lunch?
Exactly. It was just a calamity of coincidental errors that allowed for them to get their foot in the door. And had that day played out any differently, you'd still have your license.
Oh, absolutely.
But they saw a way to take you out. In the game of chess, they saw a way to take you off the chessboard.
And then control me with the conditional license to make sure I stay in check.
Exactly. Exactly. And folks, this is the way the system works. You've got a woman here, you got a lady here sitting here having this conversation with me and Pam, who had the back the blue flag, who would have told people that her local cops wouldn't be involved in things like this. Maybe watch out for social services because, we all know how those types of people think. But folks, none of this would have played out if all of the system hadn't been involved. And yes, it will happen. I mean, Plainview's like 1,600 people? It's not like it's a major metropolis. It's a tiny town. I mean, it's smaller than the town I live in. But if you don't think that your local Boys in Blue or your local county social worker isn't part of a system that's willing to abuse you, or abuse your neighbor, or abuse a friend or a family member, you're crazy, because Pam's story proves this out. It proves this out. Like, you cannot hear a story like this and legitimately sit down and say, for lack of better terminology, say, oh, screw it, Pam's just a crackpot. And I mean, Pam's a crackpot. She'll tell you she's a crackpot, but is anything that she's saying wrong? That's what you guys have to do. And I guarantee you, if you reach out to Pam and ask her for the information, oh, she'll give it to you. she will give it to you. And she's got a couple of guys who are working even harder on this than I have, and Robert and Charles. And Robert and I were talking the other day, and Robert's like, man, it looks like there is something in the daycare contracting for licensure that says that they basically have the right to come to the house whenever they want, unannounced. And
right, but my licensor did not come. That's the loophole.
Right. And I know that, and you know that, but what I said to, and Robert's not saying those things to say, oh, you guys are all crazy. He's saying, I don't, and here's the thing. This is why you don't sign anything without reading it, by the way, folks, or making sure you understand. And Pam knows that now, right? You're like,
ever.
Yeah. I was like, I say in the video breakdown of the body cam stuff, you don't talk to cops ever, ever, ever. You do not talk to cops. I don't care what they show up for. If they say we're here for X, Y, and Z, you go, okay, thank you. Where's your warrant?
Yep.
And if they say, well, can we talk to you? No, I'm not talking to you. Well, why not? Because I don't talk to cops. Well, what do you think? Because it can never help you. It's never going to help you. So when Robert was looking at this, and he and I are messaging back and forth, he's like, man, it looks like when you sign this, you are giving them permission to just show up. And I said, that doesn't give cops permission to just show up and come in your house. Social services can't give cops permission to violate the Constitution.
Exactly.
Because if social services are all you need to violate the Constitution, to violate people's right to be free from unlawful searches and seizures, then they'll just bring social services to every police call from now on. That's what they'll do. Which I hate to even put that out there, because you never know with these people. They might try that. But have you found yourself, and I'm going to ask this because I know part of the question, you're very paranoid, aren't you? Now.
Yes. Yes.
Is that an overstatement on my part?
No. I'm getting better, but, well, yeah, like I said, my house and stuff, this is not a safe place for me anymore.
It's traumatic, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, they show up whenever they want, accuse you whatever they want. It just, no.
And now it's not, you're not like social services can't touch you anymore because you don't do anything involved with that part of life.
No, no.
Yeah. But we've had some conversations. Tell people how you feel when you see cops drive by your house now.
Panic attacks. But in the back of my mind, though, now I'll wave to them and, like, you know what? Is what it is. But I still always, in the back of my mind, I always think they're there for a reason.
Yep. And I want people to hear that Pam wasn't beaten.
No.
She wasn't yanked out of her car at gunpoint. She wasn't pulled out of her house during a SWAT style raid. She was just wronged and has been traumatized. What you're hearing is a trauma response.
I absolutely believe they drive by just to do the safety of the neighborhood. I just don't believe it, because I haven't seen them since your podcast started coming out. Basically, before it was 3-4 times a day. So
So now all of your neighbors are mad at me. Like, the cops don't come in our neighborhood anymore because of that loudmouth that you hooked up with.
And there might be any reason for it, but it's just because of what happened. I don't trust them.
Yeah, and that's, how many times, and I know you've heard me say this, in different ways. Pam's had to learn the hard way that I communicate weird. I use phrases and terms that most people just scratch their head. Not because I'm smarter than them, it's just because I'm that big of a nerd. But I know Pam's heard me say this, or text to her. Correlation and causation are not the same thing. And it's very easy to get used to seeing cops drive by your house and think, wow, cool, we've got good cops in town. They're always driving by my house. To then turn and go the other direction. Why are those sons of bitches driving by my house?
Well,
and then they stop and go, why are those sons of bitches not driving by my house?
But because even my friends and stuff too. Oh my God, there's a cop out there, feel the need to text. I seen a cop turning anywhere. They're all paranoid too. And I couldn't reopen a daycare if I wanted to, because the families will go, how do we know they're not going to target you again? And our kids been through so much,
Yeah, I know we don't want to name names, but there is a family who has flat out told you and has said to social services, my kids have nightmares because of this.
Mm-hmm.
And I want people to understand, like, violence is not just, like I said, getting yanked out of your car by a cop at gunpoint. It's not getting thrown down on the ground and being handcuffed. It's not having some agent of the state show up and push you around and insult you and throw you in cuffs and haul you off to prison for an indeterminate amount of time.
No, and they were visiting, and a cop drove by, and I seen firsthand what it did to them. I mean, they clung on to me crying, thought they were going to come here and do something. And this was just not that long ago. It's still with them.
This is what happens in these moments. This is the trauma that these kids and parents, these parents are traumatized. I've listened to a couple of the conversations. These parents are like, you can hear it. We just want to know what's going on. We want to know what happened, what was done. Because your kids' safety and your kids' lives
Exactly.
are on the line. And when cops show up, especially, that's indicative of like something super serious happened. Like, and that's why I made the comment about, for the 8 years prior to May 13th of 2022, Pam was clearly doing satanic rituals in her garage and sacrificing children and selling them off to all of the deep state people so they could all drink the adrenochrome and all of this. That Pam was part of Pizzagate and all. Probably shouldn't have said that,
But I was
um,
actually doing respite for the county and very involved with them,
and
from I moved here.
and and that's how they've treated her. They treated her like she's been public enemy number one, and these lives, the lives that are impacted, it's not just Pam and her husband. It's not just Pam and her kids. It's every one of the families that was there. It's every one of the families that maybe weren't there, but now those kids have never been able to go back. And they love Pam, and they love the birds, and they love the dogs, and they love the cats, and they love, Venom, the Tegu. They loved all that stuff. Parents in conversation with these state agents, I've heard it said, we chose Pam because of the animals.
Yeah.
And these kids have had all of that ripped away from them. All of it. So
And
Pam,
I had
go
to
ahead.
lie. They lied about the violations. They lied about, and they told the families to go get a new daycare, threatening them, lying to them to get them to say something, stuff that was ruled out that didn't happen. They were bringing it back in the interviews, lying about Venom, and all I needed was nothing. It's just blowing my mind that they thought more about how to lie to get me on something than to actually look at the case.
It's unsettling to watch from the outside when the state decides that you are going to be eliminated. And and I titled the playlist for Pam stuff, Justice for Pam. But like, we're going to be brutally honest right now. I told Pam from the get-go, look, I don't think there's ever going to be any recourse for Pam. Nothing's ever going to make this right. I mean, they've drugged their feet on this. Like, people are like, she should sue. I'm like, can't anymore. Can't sue anymore. You can't. The courts flat out ruled against her. The administrative courts ruled against her. They stacked the deck against her, but they ruled against her. And once that happens, it's really hard to sue. Can't sue the cops. You'd like to, but you can't. The window for that, even if you could prove damages and prove wrongdoing, is gone.
Not the administrative courts. I mean, the only one who ruled against me was a commissioner off what Wabasha said.
Well, no, what I'm saying is that the courts. When I say courts, I mean the system. The judges, the administrative judges, sided with you, but you still lost.
Right, because apparently you pay an attorney and go there, but it doesn't mean anything because they can make them an excuse about a doggy door. That's what they got out of the body cam. That's what they got out of it. And to me, that's deeply concerning.
Right. Because they're just very good at finding these little loopholes. And so when I say, like, it's like actually getting real justice for Pam in this situation looks a lot different for me than it would maybe for somebody else. And Pam knows this. I've said this from the beginning. This is to educate other people so that they don't have to go through this again. I have said that to you, correct?
Yes.
And I want to start to wrap this up. But one
Yeah.
of the things that we've talked about, and your phone's probably about ready to die anyway.
Yep.
Uh, one of the things that we have talked about is the fact that there are people in Plainview who are tied to Chief Tim and others. In fact, somebody who's related to somebody opened a daycare right around the same time yours was shut down.
Right. Friends with them.
Yes.
Yes. Yep. So.
Is correlation causation? Not necessarily, but it's hard to not look at things like that and say to yourself,
Oh,
that's
just
pretty fishy.
that don't get inspected every year, but yet they say they do.
Right. Or those that have been inspected and had violations that have been found but have never proven any changes because of those violations.
Yep, that too. And in
So
May 3, they came in and did a TIS on a daycare and didn't bring a single police officer with.
isn't that funny?
Yeah. And the complaint we launched against them in December of 22, Kayla Hall responded to her own complaint against her. And John Dahlstrom did find concerns about my case and the way they handled it. And that's the last we heard of it. After that, they refused to sit down and listen to me and what I had to say.
Representative Druskowski is very concerned.
He did. Yes, he was. He immediately set up a Zoom, and he had the ombudsman in there and everybody else, and she backed up almost all of it because she was in court with me.
Yeah, you have an advocate that's been very, very strong for you in the ombudsman.
Amazing.
Do you think it's high time that we're finally starting to see people talk about the way the state and the counties manage daycares and childcare? Because we're starting to see a lot more stories come out about that over the last couple of weeks.
Absolutely. That's why I said I got people calling me from all different counties asking because there's one common denominator, the commissioner.
Yep. There's apparently a lot of abuse, and you and I know that, but there are a lot of people out there who they have yet to be awakened to it because they haven't had to suffer through it. Pam, what are you doing for yourself these days? How are you getting by? Other than like you got gimped up because your dog tried to murder you.
I don't know. I've been putting a lot of focus into speaking up and doing stuff like this, but family, I'm grandma now, my second grandchild, and so just starting to take, I don't know, just trying to decide what to do now that I'm finally getting someplace with it and people are listening, and not quite sure.
If anybody wanted to reach out to you and ask for, like, hey, let me see what you got going on, would you share with them?
Absolutely.
So, folks, if you're interested in seeing the documentation or seeing what she has, let me know. You can reach out to me. You can find me at mbrr podcast at yahoo.com. It should be scrolling on the scroll down below somewhere. You'll be able to find it.
A familiar situation, they can reach out to me. I'll do whatever I can to help.
She does listen. I swear. She will listen. Where do you think you're going to be in 2 years? Are you going to try and get out of Plainview or?
Absolutely.
Yeah, she goes, yes, absolutely.
Yep, but not before I figure out to donate my house to be a big old statue and eyesore for them for the rest of their lives.
I'm not going to sell it. I'm just going to just leave it here with signs in the yard about how terrible these people.
Shared my stories on it.
So if anybody's interested in helping Pam put her story all over her house before she moves, Careful, we'll end up getting accused of vandalism.
Right.
Um, well, Pam, I know that your phone's about to die, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this so that people can hear from you. No, we didn't say anything startling or overly revealing in that. I just wanted people to know there is a face behind and a voice and a person behind all of this. And um, anything that you want to share with people that are still here.
Just that they need to start speaking up like I did. I mean, even follow your gut, because that's what I did. I knew something wasn't right. I knew they lied, and that needs to stop. People need to start speaking up. Your voices need to be heard. I hear so many people that are scared of retaliation. Remember, once you send it in, they can't unsee it. I mean, like I said, I'm here to help. Reach out to
And
me if you can.
I've told Pam that the retaliation is already happening if you're afraid to speak out.
Yeah, I mean, and if they know they can bully you, they'll be even more aggressive to keep you in that submissive state. So, absolutely not. Speak out.
Yeah. The only way to keep from being retaliated against is to be vocal about what's happening to you.
Yep. I mean, if you don't speak out, it'll get, oh, you didn't say nothing before,
Yep.
and we go. So, I've been very vocal from day one in what they've done.
I'm sure everybody is shocked that you were vocal.
No.
I can I'm sure everybody who knows you is like, man, she's normally so quiet. I don't understand what.
Not at all.
No, she says. Well, thank you for your time, and I know people are going to want to talk a little bit more about this. The playlist will be linked in the description of the video. And Pam, I'm sorry that you had to go through this, but let's get out there and help other people so that they don't. So
Absolutely.
you go
For-
get out of here and enjoy the rest of your day or evening or whatever it is.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. We'll talk soon.
Yep. Bye.
Uh, folks, it's really oh boy, I hate that screen. I do not like. I don't. Which one do I not like? No, think. There, I don't like that one. I don't. That is too close. Oof. Yeah, that's better. Um, folks, I meant what I said. Like, if you don't speak out because you're afraid of retaliation, then you're already proving that retaliation is being used against you. You should never be that afraid of government. Ever. You should never be that afraid of them. And if you are that afraid of them, then it's time to wake up and realize the problems are far worse than you ever imagined or dreamed of. Like, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of Pams out there and Marcys out there. People who have been ran over and ramrodded by the system. And like I said as we were talking, it's not just Pam and Marcy. It's not just big towns. It's small towns. It's actually more prevalent than you would think in small rural areas. But it's also in the big cities, in the medium cities, in the really small towns, and no towns, and in between. And those two, Marcy and Pam, their stories, the abuse that they've suffered and the maltreatment that they've suffered happened in one county in Minnesota, not neighboring counties, in the same county. They've had the same problems, same types of problems in the same county. County attorney that's unresponsive, law enforcement apparatus that is unresponsive and unsupportive, and in Pam's case, flat out abusive. And then you get lip service from some people about wanting to serve and help. What can we do to help? And then nothing ever goes anywhere. None of this changes until everybody starts demanding the change. And I know a lot of you that watch this will be like, well, I'm all about, just follow the law and do, sure. That's all well and good. But it's high time that traditional conservative types wake up to the abuse that happens in the system. Because your failure to acknowledge it is what allows it to go on. I've made a reference to this in other shows, but I'll make the reference here. There's an old Latin phrase, and I can't off the top of my head remember it in Latin, but it translates to, "He who is silent is known to consent." Just because something's happening to someone else and not you doesn't mean that you don't have a right to speak to it. And it doesn't mean that you can't speak to it. In fact, the reality that you do not speak to it means you consent to it happening. And it's time for you to withdraw your consent and start to speak. You have to make a change for other people. Because sooner or later, the system's going to turn on you, and when it does, it'll be too late. Big shout out to all the channel members for continuing to support the work that I do. Shout out to show producer level supporters like IMAV from Subscribestar and My Anonymous, who's done a massive amount of work to help. Cannot thank you guys enough. All the channel members. One of these days, I'm going to just do a show where I tell you who the channel members are, not by name, but just who they are and what they've done. I really appreciate you guys tuning in for the second show for season 4 of TC and Friends Monday Night Musings. We've got an episode of Libertarian Lowdown coming out next week. It's going to be a great conversation. I'm going to be having Jeremy from the Free State Project in New Hampshire on. He is going to be telling us about what the Free State Project is, what it means, what they're doing. You can find Jeremy Kaufman on X, and you can look up the Free State Project there. And he will be the season 4 premiere of Libertarian Lowdown. He is a phenomenal voice for libertarian philosophy and living it out. And the strides they're making in New Hampshire are just absolutely amazing. They're on the cusp of flipping New Hampshire's state houses. It's mind blowing the number of libertarians they've got elected into different positions, who share very strong libertarian philosophies and ideals. And it's a step in the right direction. So tune in for that. Be looking as well for my conversation with next Monday. We'll be airing my conversation with Brad Kaler, who's running for governor in state of Minnesota, get the nomination to challenge whoever the Dems put up. So we'll be putting that out for TC and Friends Monday Night Musings a week from tonight. And I look forward to your guys' response on that conversation as well. I'm going to wrap this up so you all can get to bed or do whatever it is you're going to do. If you're not watching this at night, you're watching this during an afternoon or a morning. Thanks for tuning in. Share it out. Reach out. And if you want to talk to Pam, let me know and I will connect you with her. So until next time, my friends, fight for one of my channel supporters. Fight for your liberty. It is yours. Fight for your freedom. It belongs to you. And Sic Semper Tyrannis.